Okay, so in this question we basically just have to write some word equations, and to do this the key thing is that you can recognize what are the chemicals in the story of what's happening. So for instance here we've got magnesium reacts with oxygen to produce magnesium oxide, and so we've got magnesium, oxygen, and magnesium oxide, and it's a good kind of idea just to highlight the different things we've got first. So like the next one, copper carbonate decomposes to form copper oxide and carbon dioxide. So I've got copper carbonate, I've got copper oxide, and carbon dioxide. Okay, so sometimes it's difficult to tell whether it's one thing or two things. So some of you might be wondering, is it copper and carbonate? Well, then it would have the words and, alright? So if it just runs together like copper carbonate, it's one thing. Whereas here you've got, like, let's have a look. We've got oxygen reacts with hydrogen. We've got water. So water is produced when oxygen reacts with hydrogen. And then we've got here calcium sulfate and water. So if it was calcium sulfate water, then it might be one thing, but the and tells us they're actually separate things. Calcium sulfate and water are produced when calcium hydroxide reacts with sulfuric acid. So then all you got to do is decide, alright, which are the reactants and which are the products. So we might go here, we've got magnesium reacts with oxygen. So that tells me that these two are actually the reactants. Reacts with is a clue that those are the reactants. And then it says to produce, so the to produce tells me this is the product. So what our final thing should actually look like is basically like this. Let me just type it out. So we've got, hold on, just shift that. Magnesium reacting with oxygen to make magnesium oxide. So we put magnesium plus oxygen, and then we've got an arrow makes magnesium oxide. So that's basically the answer there. And sorry, that looks a little bit funny. So there you go, that's the, sorry I probably went a bit quiet there, the microphone went a bit further away from me. But that's basically the answer there. Okay, so the next one, let's have a look. What are my reactants? Copper carbonate decomposes, it means it breaks down. Alright, oh, I shouldn't have done that bit in green. Okay, copper carbonate is actually my reactant. And the real clue here is that we know it says here to form copper oxide and carbon dioxide. So when it says to form these things, if these are the things that are being made, they must be the products. They go after the arrow. So we put this one in, copper carbonate. Decomposes, so we put it in an arrow. Forms to make copper oxide, forms copper oxide and carbon dioxide. And sorry, I'm getting a bit cut off there, but we write it like this. So the one word, the arrow, and then the two products. Okay, alright, so what about the next one? Water is produced. So this one is actually telling us water is the product. Water is produced when oxygen reacts with, that's the clue that we know these are the reactants, they go first. So this one's actually back to front. Water is produced, whereas here we said to form these things. So if water is produced, it's the product, and these things are the reactants. So we go oxygen plus hydrogen, arrow, water. And there's our answer there. Okay? Alright, and D, let's have a look at this. Calcium sulfate and water are produced. Alright, so it tells me these two, oh, wrong colour. Alright, try and keep it the same for each one. So it tells me calcium phosphate and water, if they're produced, they're the products. When calcium hydroxide, so that's calcium hydroxide, reacts with, that tells me these two are the reactants, sulfuric acid. So let's put this one in. Let's see what that would look like. So calcium sulfate and water are produced when we get calcium hydroxide plus sulfuric acid, and we put the arrow, makes calcium sulfate and water. Sorry, it's cutting me off, I can't go any longer than that. But calcium hydroxide plus sulfuric acid, arrow, we put calcium sulfate and water. So it's just a matter of picking what are the reactants and look for the words react with, alright, and what are the products. And the products, you're looking for the words like produce, or to form, or are produced, or are made. Those are the products, the things that go after the arrow. So you can see here sometimes the way it's worded isn't always the way it's written, but if it ever says something is produced or formed or made, you know that goes after the arrow. And if it says that two things react, they go before the arrow. So that's basically the answer there.